Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned into our channel. Welcome to the American Ultras Talk. Here we are, Braden and I bringing to you guys a segment that a lot of people enjoyed. When we did the depth chart, we're analyzing position by position how good is our depth. I think it's the best generation that we ever had. Now we finally have players that are at a good level to be right next to the starters, really. And it's really interesting, but we are talking about one of the positions that sadly a lot of people think is very uninteresting. Nobody really grows up to want to be a fullback. So we just group both of them together. We'll be analyzing left backs and right backs. Let's be honest, it'd be kind of boring to do a video talking about 10 right backs when in fact only 5 would be in contention for a call up. So we're grouping the left backs and the right backs all together. And I'm wearing this jersey. I was born in Brazil, as some of you guys may know, but I will say this. There's not a single person born in this country that has better fullbacks than our starters, in my opinion. I think that we have better fullbacks than Brazil, just saying that out there. But anyway, straight to the point, Braden, starting off here in 10th place in depth chart. Again, this is a top 10. So in the 10th place, Braden, who's the first one? That is a little bit down the pecking order, but it's an honorable mention for you.
Oh, the first thing I have to say is respect Ayrton Lucas, but starting off with number 10 for right back, I went with DeAndre Yedlin. I think there's a couple of young guys that he just beat out, a couple of MLS lifers as well that haven't really been in consideration. But I think due to the experience that he's had in such a great career, I think he deserves a mention in this video. Not obviously too high on the list. He's kind of fallen off. He's getting old, but he's still playing at a decent level. I mean, he's playing with some of the best players of all time in Miami, and he's basically the co-captain with Messi. Basically, Messi takes care of the Spanish players or Spanish-speaking players. Yedlin takes care of the English-speaking players. So, I mean, he's still having a great career, even though it is in MLS and a lower league. He had a great career in Europe as well, with Newcastle in particular. And I just think he deserves a mention. One of the rare instances of experience that is ever called into the USMNT. We have a very young roster, so I think he deserves just a little bit of mention and appreciation for his career. And then at left back, I have John Hilton, a player who probably a lot of people don't know, a younger guy. I believe he's 22 years old. Plays for Dordrecht with Correde Osandina, another American, in the Dutch second division. They're up in I think the promotion playoff hunt, and he's been having a really good season, honestly. I think he's one of the most underrated players in our pool in general. And I think we have a lot of good young left backs now, so he couldn't get any higher, but he does make the list ahead of a couple of other players that are pretty hyped.
All right, now getting started on my top 10, and I agree with you. I think it is nice to give Yedlin a bit of respect. A lot of people hate on him just for being an MLS player. He's not an MLS lifer. He did his life really in Europe, so props to him. And I think that he was very lucky to be playing at Inter Miami, because now all the spotlight's on them. They're going to have a good team. Props to him. He does deserve it. My criteria is a little bit different. I think this is one of the good things about the channel. We do take 2 different perspectives. There's not much of that out there. And I just grouped them all up as if it was one position, really. I think that Braden has a lot of a more broad perspective on our players, a better scout, so he has more names to include in the list. Mine's a lot simpler, just a simplistic view. In 10th place in the pecking order for our fullbacks, I'm going for Daquan Jones. I put him as a left back. I think that's his best position. I think he's a good player. I really think that he's a very solid, consistent performer. I've never seen really that much of a struggle for him, either defensively or offensively. I think he's very good at both. He does have the capacity to recover quite well defensively, so I think that he can brush off some of the stigma that is around him. I put him in 10th because I think that he's honorable of a mention right here, but realistically, I don't want him anywhere near the 18. Now we're going on to 9th place, Braden. Who are your picks?
Yeah, and let us know in the comments, guys, whose criteria do you think is better? Am I doing too much with this? But moving on to 9th place, and it's a bit of a theme, actually, because in the goalkeepers video, I picked our goalkeeper from Camp Cupcake, and actually my 9th place for both positions are also from Camp Cupcake. I have a left back, Caleb Wiley, and a right back, Nathan Ariel. I think the MLS guys who are young tend to be around this type of position, just cracking the top 10 of our depth chart. Obviously, they are young. They can get higher ahead of some of the other guys who are a bit more experienced as they develop in their careers. I think Ariel in particular, I'm probably the only USMNT fan ever that's excited about him, but he's looking really, really good. I think getting called up to the USMNT just lit a fire under him. He's been amazing in preseason. He's looking to have a breakout season in MLS. I mean, he kind of already has, but he's going to be the locked-in starter for the Union, who are so good at developing players, and I think he's going to be really good opposite one of the best fullbacks in MLS on the other side. And then for Caleb Wiley, he's an Olympic player as well. Both of them are actually. And he's been in contention for the starting spot. Him and John Tolkien have kind of been battling it out. Jonathan Gomez is in the mix as well. And I think he's a very good player. I think he showed his worth at the U20 World Cup. He's a little bit more attacking than I would like from a fullback. I think his defensive abilities could be worked on a little bit. He's more of a wing back than a fullback completely, but I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's the youngest player on my list in general. So I think they both deserve the 9th spot.
That's a good take. I completely agree. I do agree with the last bit on Wiley. I do see him more going towards the Paredes route than staying as a left back, but he is very good. I think we're so stacked at fullbacks here. It's so nice to talk about. This is one of my favorite videos. Now moving on to 9th place. I'm going for a guy that I know he's likely not going to get a call up, but just out of respect for becoming a cult hero really in his previous club, and he's doing well. It's Gooch. I'm going for Gooch. I have him quite low on my list. If we had done this list in the summer, he would have been a lot higher, but sadly his stock did go down a little bit. But it's still a good performance, solid guy. I think that if there's another Gold Cup, he could get popped in there. I don't think he's 18 quality, but he has a lot of experience and a lot of character. It does take a lot of character to cut it in the lower divisions. So I'm putting Gooch there. Moving on to 8th place. What are your picks, Braden?
For my 8th place, right back, I'm going with another cult hero, like Lyndon Gooch. I'm going for Timothy Chandler from Eintracht Frankfurt, and at left back, George Bello, another Atlanta United product, like Caleb Wiley. For Chandler, it's pretty simple. He's old, he's on the decline, he's had some injury issues, but like Yedlin, I think he deserves some respect. And at the end of the day, he's still a rostered player and a legend, one of the fan favorites at a very good Bundesliga club. I think he still does have the quality, maybe not USMNT level, but he definitely deserves to be on this list based on his quality and his career in general. It's safe to say when he did first get recruited to the USMNT, it didn't really work out for the 2014 World Cup. That German influx that we kind of had for that, none of them really panned out, unfortunately. But honestly, I think some of them are still very good players and disrespected by the fan base a lot. And then for Bello, I think he's really revived his career. He had a horrible start at Arminia Bielefeld, got relegated back-to-back, left the club. He joined LASK in LASK in Austria. He's playing the Europa League, played against Mohamed Salah in 2 different games, which I think is a cool experience that not a lot of players, especially in our pool, get to do. Only him and Jedi, really. And yeah, I think it's been a very good bounce back season for him. Austria is not the best of leagues, but LASK is a pretty good level for him. And I think it actually does enough for him to be even ahead of Wiley, his fellow Atlanta United product, even though he has been out of the USMNT picture for some time.
Hey, and stranger things have happened. You never know. He's still at an age where he could get called up. It's unfortunate for him that we have all this depth now in his position. And going on to my next pick, you already said Yedlin. I put Yedlin on 8th place. I know it is quite high, but one of the reasonings for this pick is because I still think he's going to get quite a few call-ups in the future. I don't think that he's 18 quality, but I think that Greg really values his experience, and we do have a very young squad, so maybe he is useful for that. He has been through a lot really in his career, played at a good stage, at a good level, and it was people touch on this key a lot, but he did have an experience in the World Cup, the only guy with World Cup experience, last World Cup coming into the tournament. So I think especially now playing with Messi, he's still going to get some call-ups. So I put him in 8th place. Out of respect too. The guy has had a solid career, but if I'm the coach, I'm never calling him up again. Now moving on to I don't know if that's harsh, but 7th place, Braden. Who are the guys that you think deserve that place?
Honestly, Greg loves calling up too many fullbacks for some reason. We saw 4 right backs in the World Cup. He always seems to add on a 5th fullback just for vibes, I guess. And honestly, if they're not going to play, it might as well call up someone with experience. So I don't honestly hate Yedlin getting call-ups if the player's not going to play regardless. But moving on to 7, I'm going to mention, like you said earlier, Lyndon Gooch is my 7th highest right back. And at left back, I've got Jonathan Gomez, which I think it might be a little surprising to some people considering that Wiley has been ahead of him in the pecking order for the Olympics. But I still rate Jonathan Gomez higher. I think he's having a better season, albeit in probably a slightly worse league than Wiley. But Wiley, I think, failed to impress a little bit with Atlanta last season. He had a little bit of an underwhelming season, especially after the U20 World Cup, his promising performances. Speaking of that tournament, Jonathan Gomez scored our first goal there against Ecuador. It was a great goal as well. And honestly, his loan at Mirandes from Sociedad has gone brilliantly. It's a pretty small club in La Liga too, but he's helped them keep quite a few clean sheets. He's been one of their best players. And I think, honestly, for his first real pro season, at a high level, I think he's doing very, very well for himself. So I've got him up in 7th. As for Lyndon Gooch, you already touched on most of the points. He's a cult hero at Sunderland. Their fans still absolutely adore him. He has had a bit of a down year at Stoke City. He's kind of not Sunderland quality anymore now that they're pushing for a return back to the Prem. But I think he does deserve to be here. I think he can still play at a good level. And another important thing, he's very versatile. He can play right back, left back. He can play in a back 3 on either side. He can play as a winger even sometimes, an outside mid. So he can basically play anywhere. He's a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, I agree with both takes. I agree with Gomez being ahead of Wiley as well. I think that as a left back, he has more of a future there. Moving on to my 7th pick, it's Reggie Cannon. He gets this pick quite high on the list, but I think he's still very young, and he gets a lot of extra points for his statements on Greg Berhalter in the past. I think he's a martyr, really. The man put his national team career on the line to voice the opinions of a lot of fans. And wait, who's to say it didn't have an impact, really? Because Greg's roster call-ups have been significantly better. So maybe he caught on to the fact that some players know that you don't really get rewarded for challenging yourself and performing at a good level abroad to try to make the most of your career. And he has had a good season. It's unfortunate that he just got an injury, but I think that Ken is such an underrated defender. Just because of his physique and his build, people think that he'll be good going forward, and that's where he would shine the most. But I think he's a very good defender. And props to him for sticking it out. Well, we see that a lot of clubs in Portugal struggle with finances, and he still tried to stay around there, and really props to him. He's a young player. If Greg's not the coach, he gets fired, I think that Cannon would be right back in the mix for a call-up in the right back, although we are stacked there, so that's why he's 7th place. Now, moving on, approaching, getting closer to that top 5, Braden, who's in 6th place for you?
So my 6th places are going to be Marlon Fossey at right back, playing for Standard Liège in Belgium. And at left back, I'm going to go for Sam Vines, who is the most unlucky player in the USMNT pool this season. We all know what happened to him at Antwerp, getting left off the Champions League roster due to an administrative error and getting injured at the same time. Just a heartbreaking turn of events for him, who he was playing at a good level. It's not like he was doing bad at all. He won the league with Antwerp last season. And I think the fact that he was still playing so good at a high level warrants him being in 6th ahead of some other players here, even though he is back in MLS now with the Colorado Rapids, who, by the way, are going to be one of the most exciting teams in the league this season due to all their new signings, all the failed quote-unquote players from the USMNT that came back, Mihailovic and Stefan as well. But yeah, I think Vines deserves to be here, and honestly, if he wasn't so unlucky, he'd probably be 2 or 3 spots higher. As for the right back, Marlon Fossey, he's been having a very underrated season in Belgium. I think he warrants consideration at the very least for a call-up, especially since Dest will be suspended for the Nations League semifinal. And I'm still sticking by this, even though it's only 1 game and it's a 2-game camp. In theory, if we do win, I still don't think Dest should be there. I know he could help us a lot in the final, but I think he deserves some sort of punishment for the stupid behavior that he showed against Trinidad and Tobago, regardless if it does hurt us on the pitch. There needs to be a standard set.
Yeah, I will defend Serginho until the end of days. So, no, but I understand it. And I also agree. I think it's a 2-game camp. Take a guy that can play on 2 games, really. I think it's quite obvious, really. But people may disagree with that. But anyways, I'm going on 6th place for a left back. Plays in the MLS. This guy, I think that, I'll just say John Tolkien, I think that he has honestly, he was always relevant. But he really upped his game last season, especially in the Leagues Cup. I think that his performances were amazing there. In the MLS as well, I think he's still very questionable defensively sometimes, not because of pace or because of 1v1 defending. I think just mostly zoning off, really. and not having tactical awareness really to cover his position. Not that he lumps forward and forgets to track back. It's just weird. I think that his position is makes it quite difficult for him to avoid getting balls behind the back, or really a guy taking him on and having too much space for him to approach. So, but I still, it seems like I'm roasting him, but I still think he's a really good player, and I like that he's one of the protagonists for his club. I think that's really important. And you see all these rumors. I don't think he's going to Chelsea. With some people put it out there, but no, he should definitely be going to Europe. I think that he should make the most of the opportunities that he gets during the summer, which is when I think he'll leave. And I put him in 6th place. I think he's right up there for getting edging closer. Still not 18 quality yet, but I don't think it would be absurd to call him up at this point for our main camp. But moving on, top 5, here we are. Who are the guys that make it for you, Braden?
You just mentioned one of them. John Tolkien's going to be my 5th place for left back, and you mentioned the other one as well. Actually, Reggie Cannon is number 5 for me at right back. Like you said, a hero for his comments, and maybe he did make an impact, because we're seeing people like Tanner Tessman, Leonard Maloney get call-ups because of their challenging themselves in Europe. So maybe Greg did listen to Cannon, although he will probably never call him up again, even though they did actually have a conversation recently. Apparently it went pretty well. So maybe Cannon could be back. Another thing that he does is he plays in a back 3 occasionally. He did that a lot at Boa Vista as a right center back, which a lot of our fans I've seen have been calling for us to try a new formation, a back 3, a 3-5-2. I think Cannon could maybe be a little useful in that, because our center backs aren't too great either, and we don't have a lot of good fullbacks who can defend. So I think he deserves consideration there, and I like the level he's been playing at, even though it would have been so easy for him to go back to MLS and make a lot of money, especially after the financial difficulties that he had at Boa Vista, never getting paid on time. The fact that he continued to stick it out in Europe, signed for QPR, a relegation-threatened team, I think it just shows his character, honestly, and how he's going to keep fighting, and I really admire that. So I've got him top 5 for right backs. As for John Tolkien, you mentioned it already, very talented MLS guy. He should be going to Europe next summer. Hopefully he will. I think he will. He's probably the New York Red Bulls' best player, or well, second best now that they signed Emil Forsberg. But yeah, I think he has a huge future, and he could be several spots higher in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I'll just say now, Tolkien to Venezia, make it happen. We need a left back. But moving on to my 5th place is Fossey. You already talked about him. I think you did him justice. Really good player. I think that he is really good and very underrated. Nobody ever talks about him, but you look at him, watch the highlights. He's always doing well. It's hard for a right back to have as many highlights as he has. Chances created defensively, and one of the best hairs of the game right there. Very unique. So I give extra points for that. But anyways, moving on, top 4. Now we reach the place of players where you would call up to the national. Well, on my criteria, but on yours, there's a little bit more depth, more extensive there. But in 4th place, really close to the 18. Who do you have?
For right back, I have our starting player for the Olympics, Brian Reynolds. And at left back, I've got Daewon Jones. I think you had him maybe a little too low, although considering your criteria, it's about the same spot that I would have had him in a top 10. I think he's very versatile. He's one of the few MLS guys that is warranting a consideration for a call-up. He can play both sides, and since we know Greg likes to bring 5 fullbacks as a 5th fullback, if you're not going to bring a guy like Yedlin for experience, you can at least bring a guy who can play both sides to back up just in case there's an injury, and I think Daewon Jones is a perfect example of that. He's been very good for the Revs at left back. I do think that's his best position, despite the fact that he can play both sides. And honestly, I think his window to Europe has passed, probably considering his age. He's just about entering his prime. It's a bit of a shame, because I think he could have done a job there, but if he can continue to be one of the best left backs in the MLS, I think he'll still be in and around the window for USMNT call-ups, as all these players around this level will be. And as for Brian Reynolds, we've already seen the talent he had. He had a pretty good Gold Cup, I would say. He scored an absolute screamer in the group stage, and he's been pretty good for the Olympic team as well. I think he's got a bright future. He's playing very well at Westerlo, their club record signing, and he's proved why this season. He's been very good. Him and Griffin Yao down the right side for Westerlo have been excellent.
Yeah, it's nice to see. I think that Reynolds will make the majority of his career in Europe. He's only going to be back in MLS for retirement, and that speaks volumes that a guy can carve out a career for such a long time there. I think that he will be able to do that. and chose the right move as well. Knew his place, chose the right move. Great revivals. A lot of our players can learn from that. Moving on to my fourth pick, which is a guy that I would already call up as a backup to our starter. You have him as your background. It's Christopher Lund. I watched a lot of Lund. A lot of people may have figured already because of my Testament love right here that I'm an NT fan. So I see that Lund's such a good player, and I think that although his best qualities are definitely offensively, he's a good defender. He can be a good defender too. He benefits from the way that Palermo play, but I don't think that will really go up. But I will say this, he will find himself in Serie A next year. I don't think he would stick around in Palermo. He is a cheap player, relatively cheap. Not many people know him, and Italian clubs love to poach on Serie B clubs that have good performers. So, and I think that he is deserving of that, and I would definitely call him up as the backup to Jedi. What a good player, what a good find, and props to the USSF for recruiting him. I think that that came out of the blue for a lot of people. And moving on, third place for you.
Yeah, so in third place, I think both of them are actually a little bit of uncharacteristic players. For right back, I'm going Jeremy Toljan, a German player, but he does have American citizenship. He has rejected our calls in the past, as well as the calls of Croatia, because he wanted to keep playing for Germany. He played for them at basically every youth level. He won a silver medal at the Olympics with them back in 2016. But let's face it, Jeremy, if you're somehow watching this, you are 29. Germany are never calling you up. Come join the USMNT, especially this camp. We could really use a player like him. He's playing in Serie A consistently. Sassuolo are having a bit of a down year, but he's still a consistent Serie A player. I think he deserves the number 3 spot on this list if he were to play for us. He probably won't. And at left back, I'm actually going with another German dual national, Nathaniel Brown. I've been very impressed by him this season at Nuremberg. He's having a really, really good season, a breakout year. And as a result of that, he was signed for Frankfurt. He'll join them next season back at Nuremberg for the rest of the season, which I think will be very good for his development. And I think he'll flourish, honestly, at Frankfurt in the Bundesliga. It's a very attacking league. He's a very good player at putting in crosses, attacking. He gets a lot of assists, kind of like similar to Lund in that way. But I think he'll do very, very well in the Bundesliga, where a lot of goals are scored, honestly. And yeah, I think without Lund, he'd definitely be in consideration for the backup left back spot if he does accept a call up, because he is still a Germany youth player. He's with their, I believe, U21s or either that or U23s. So we do still need to convince him a little bit, but I think we should, because down the line he could definitely be a huge asset to the USMNT.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like those picks because a lot of people may not even know who Brown is, but he'll definitely be in the public eye next season, and he earned that. And I think that we can poach him. I really do. I think that I think that we should really go for it, even though we're stacked. It never hurts to have depth. And well, these players don't really get injured, but Americans like to get injured all the time, so it never hurts. Moving on to my third place, he also plays in Germany. It's Joe Scally, the best player pay to play ever had. And I'm not being unfair to him. He's a very competent player. But I really like Joe Scally. I think he locked Davies in a game that we really needed him to. Stepped up. What a good game that he had. I would like to see him leave, really, to be just playing as a full right back. I think that it would be nice. I like the system that he plays in. I like that he's getting consistent minutes. But I think it'd be a nice moment for him to test the waters. We see a lot of people there are a lot of rumors for him for the summer, even in this window. Some clubs in the Premier League. I would really enjoy to see how he would do there. I think it'd be a nice step up. Maybe he's at the right spot, but regardless, third place for me, he's the immediate backup for Dest. I think it's very natural to call him up, and also props to him for standing up against Greg as well with the comments that he doesn't get what Greg does. So even more extra points right there for him, but he makes my top 3. Now, second place. Now, in your criteria, the guys that you would call up, Braden, who makes it?
I think it's a bit disrespectful to Gio Reyna calling Scally the best player that pay to play ever produced. But regardless, going into my top 2, and let's just start with Joe Scally, right back. Like you said, the immediate backup to Serginho Dest at number 1. I think there's no secret that he'd be number 1 for the right backs. And yeah, I think the transfer rumors are a bit premature. Honestly, Gladbach's defense has been very shaky. I'm not blaming him completely, but he does have a hand in that. In the back 5, playing as a right center back. I do think he should get a move, because I think he should be playing at his primary position of right back, kind of like Reggie Cannon got a move to do just that. But I think the likes of Newcastle, AC Milan is a bit of a step too high for him. I don't think he's at that level. Honestly, if he joined either of these two clubs, I'm not sure he would play. We saw Dest join AC Milan, and he didn't play. Imagine Scally. That's all I'm going to say. But he's a very, very good player. He does his job whenever he's called upon for the USMNT, and I have no doubts that he'll do just as well against Jamaica in the Nations League semifinal. And then as for left back, my favorite player in this list by far, Christopher Lund. You see in my backgrounds, the player that I discovered before a lot of USMNT fans. If you have been watching for a while, you know how big of a fan I am of his. I think he still has a legit shot to challenge Jedi for the left back spot a couple years down the line, maybe not for 2026, but after that in the future, it might be crazy to say considering the form Jedi's in right now, but I really believe in Christopher Lund. I was so hyped when we got him over Denmark, and he's just another proof of the dual nationals, how important they are to us.
Yeah, and it's nice to see how proud he is to be called up to the US. Really nice, honestly. You see, this guy gives interviews all the time in Italy too, because everybody loves him. So he's a very likable dude, probably really good person to have in the dressing room. Great left back, and well, you called it first, but I also put him in my list because I think that he is A-team quality. I would be comfortable with him playing if Jedi were to get injured. I completely agree. Second place, my criteria, this crazy criteria where I grouped all these players as if it was one position. I put Serginho Dest, one of my favorite players in the USMNT. And yeah, nothing left to say really. He revived his career and is having a great season, chose the right move. Hopefully he gives up on the dream at Barcelona, even though Xavi's going to leave. I think that ship has sailed. Just stay at PSV or go somewhere else. But I'll just say stay for now, one more season. And I think that he is the most technically gifted player that we have in our pool, all positions. I think that he's the silkiest player that we have. And I really like how he always tries to make things happen. So creative. Nothing left to say. Serginho Dest, second place. Now, moving on to your top picks, Braden. Who would you call up? I think you already said one of them is Dest, but why? Surprise us with who's your best left back.
Yeah, the shock of the century. Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson are undisputed number ones at both positions, despite the fact that Dest has shown the mental capacity of a 3-year-old against Trinidad and Tobago. So maybe Scally deserves a start, but we've seen the quality that Dest has, especially when he's wearing the USA kit. He just turns into a different player. He looks Brazilian, honestly. I know you're wearing the kit, but his attacking quality is truly second to none, especially from our pool. His defense, not the best, but it doesn't really matter in CONCACAF, to be honest. And against top nations, maybe we get punished, but that's what we have Jedi for. The athleticism that this guy has, he's a workhorse, always up and down the wing in a blink of an eye. He does have lapses of concentration occasionally, but honestly, he can get away with it because he's so fast, he recovers instantly. We saw a couple occasions, both for Fulham and for the USMNT, where he can recover for Tim Ream's mistakes and slowness just immediately. And I think it's so valuable to have players like both of them on the flanks. Our fullback situation is very secured for now and the future, as you saw by this top 10 list.
Absolutely, and I'll shock everyone and say that Jedi is my top pick, the most reliable player that we have in the fullback position. You said it all, recovers so well. What a good guy, and I'm so happy that he's having the season that he's having. But I'll say, Jedi, stay at Fulham. Stay at Fulham. Don't leave. I think it's good for him to stay there. But if you watched the video and made it this far, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Put in the comments below who you think would be your backups. I think that the starters everybody knows, but who would be your backups for the fullback positions? And make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and stay tuned. We will have the center backs next on our list, and that is one position, so we'll have the same criteria because I won't come up with anything crazy. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time.